Hello, and welcome to the Everyday Business Problems Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Crysler. Each episode, we talk to business leaders and subject matter experts to learn about the challenges they've overcome and the challenges they still face. You'll hear fresh insights, real talk, and get inspiration to grow your business. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us on another episode of the Everyday Business Problems Podcast. Today we have Jennifer McConnell, who is the Director of Operations with Royal Printers up in British Columbia, Canada. Jennifer is a dynamic leader with more than 20 years of experience in the print industry and is passionate about workplace culture, mentorship, and bringing up the next generation in print. Jennifer is the driving force behind the PELT program, an initiative bringing fresh talent into the industry, and a celebrated industry voice as the chair of Print Forward's membership and programs committee, as well as the editor of Presslines magazine. She also recently received the 2024 Emerging Leader of the Year award, so huge congratulations to you on that. And Jennifer, thanks so much for coming on the Everyday Business Problems Podcast.
Thank you. It's really exciting, and I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to get into this conversation. I think we ultimately connected on this idea about the next generation of print, and I shared with you I was a young leader in print many moons ago, or at least it feels like that. And so I was really excited to get into this conversation with you and to kind of talk about what that really means and, you know, how can we get young people excited about print and manufacturing from a, you know, an even more broad perspective. So what was it for you? What about print had you coming into this industry?
I needed a job, and my dad happened to own a printing company. I think the story of what brings us into print can be very, very common. We fell into it, or we were born into it. And I feel like I was fortunate enough to be born into it, although I didn't actually choose it right off the bat. What kept me here was the print community in British Columbia, honestly. We've got a very tight-knit and very supportive and loving print community here. And so after I floundered through the first couple of years of my career, I definitely started to feel like I was becoming a part of that community, and it just spread from there.
Yeah, I love it. I lovingly say I was born into the industry as well. And I mean, my oldest memories are running around the shop and riding around like the Big Joe, which, you know, is a big safety no-no. All of the things we shouldn't have done, you know, like running around the dark room and, you know, playing with chemicals, probably not the most ideal scenario, but it was definitely my childhood. So I totally resonate with you there. Talk to me a little bit about like the mentorship aspect. I mean, who was your mentor, or who is your mentor? How did that kind of, you know, become a part of, you know, where you're at today and how you see that in the industry?
Well, I have quite a few. I feel there are definitely some that stand out as being more impactful than others. And then there are some that have been more ongoing than others. So I think the biggest benefit that I had when I moved here, my dad put me in touch with the former executive director of Print Forward. It was BCPIA at the time, Marilyn Knock. And she had run our association for decades. And so literally within 24 hours of arriving, I'm with her and learning the ropes of what is now Print Forward. And I just started to become a part of that family with the association. And so the biggest mentors that I've had, other than my dad, of course, have been those members of the association, many of whom are still on the board of directors with me today. We've only had, I think, 3 of them retire since I joined about 20 years ago. So there's been a lot of longevity there, a lot of true support over my struggles and finding out where I wanted to be in this industry and what I wanted to do. And then there are ones like Tom Chambers, who is retired now. He used to work at Unisource, which is now called Imperial Date. And Tom was a huge advocate of mine. I mentioned him in my thank you speech for my award because I really feel like he saw me before I could see myself. And he was just one of those people that would tell you what he saw. And eventually I started to believe him. And then I could really start to feel myself grow within that comfort level of being confident and understanding what my skill sets were and what I could bring to the table. And yeah, lots of members of the board of directors on Print Forward have been my champions and supporters for 2 decades now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, one of the things you brought up that I think, when you kind of talk about more broadly getting younger folks interested in, print specifically, but manufacturing maybe, at a kind of a higher level, is the fact that there are a bunch of different places to be, right? Like there's a bunch
Oh
of
yeah.
different opportunities. It could be in leadership. It could be, out on the floor. If you're something, if you're a really creative person, it could be somebody that's, in the sales and marketing department, or, in the creative department. So talk maybe a little bit about your journey through that, like, and how did kind of those mentors help shape, those experiences? Like, I know when I was growing up in the industry, my dad made me work like every single job, in the shop. Like, one
Yeah.
day I was taking out garbage, and the next day I was doing, ride-alongs on sales calls. So it was like, talk to me though about that, and like how we can ultimately interest people and share that story, that there are all these different opportunities in the industry.
Yeah, I won't bore you with all the details of all the things that I did. Let's just say I did everything. um, I think it's really important for people to know that you can literally do anything in our industry. If you want an office job, if you want an outside sales job, if you want marketing and design, if you want manufacturing, if you want technology, IT, there's anything available to you. If you like to work with your hands, if you don't, and that's why with the PELT program, because it's very entry level, our main purpose of the program is to introduce the participants of that program to as many different areas of the industry as possible, so that they can get a feel for what's available to them and what might speak to them or resonate with them and something that they would like. One of the biggest challenges that anyone in our industry will tell you right now is we are taken for granted every single day. You cannot walk outside and go more than 5 feet without seeing something printed. You can't be in your house. You cannot exist anywhere
Yeah.
without seeing printed material. It's why we were deemed an essential service. All of the food packaging and everything that, people are buying and holding in their hands is all print. And I would love to see print as its own category within the government instead of being under manufacturing. That's maybe a pipe dream, but a girl can dream. So we'll see what happens in the next 20 years. I just really want to start pushing within, the high schools and colleges and prep schools before kids really start to think about what they want to do, or even at that time, and introduce them to our industry and all of the amazing opportunities that there are. We get a lot of graphic designers because that's something that I guess that's the intentional route.
Yeah.
Right? The graphic design, that's more of an intentional route. We have an amazing program at BCIT, the graphics communications programs, and we have lots of other schools who have graphic design programs, but we want to see more people being driven towards, being a press operator and learning how to run a digital press or an offset press and learning the bindery equipment. We're seriously struggling to find those technical, machine inclined people. And part of it is on us, and we are working to do our best to provide some kind of training program in the future. Very early talks about that right now, but we know that it's necessary, and hopefully the government will continue to support our endeavors there while we continue to push forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a challenge, broadly speaking, right? Like for a good number of years, there was certainly, especially in the states, at least, kind of a conversation around, like moving away from some of the more blue collared skills and manufacturing, print specifically, any of those really technical, hands on types of career paths. I mean, a lot of the vocational programs were being cut, right? Even some of the internships, all of that stuff. And so I think we've found ourselves where we created this gap. And now a lot of folks that did go that, kind of more traditional route, if you will, are finding like there's still so many really exciting opportunities,
Okay.
to do something different. Right. So I know
Yeah.
like my kind of role from a mentorship perspective is to share that story. That was my story. I grew up in the printing industry. My parents owned two different printing companies. The company I spent the majority of my professional career with was in print and acquired printing companies. So, yeah, I think to that point, right? Like we as an industry and thought leaders, we need to be on the forefront of, continuing to speak to government. Also, then opening our doors and bringing folks, especially young folks, like in and just showing them around and showing them all of the different opportunities that exist within the industry, and continuing the conversation. I think sometimes it's easy to fall into the we're never going to find this young talent pool of people, but here's two young people that started out in the industry all these years later still
Yeah.
talking about doing the same thing, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it is hard to get away, especially when you can find a company that values you and fosters growth for you within
Yeah.
your career. I haven't worked at a lot of different companies. I tend to stay for about 5 years, but the companies that I have worked at prior to Royal have been extremely crucial to my growth and my understanding of the print industry and production. I wouldn't say I know close to everything. Nobody could. I do know a lot about a lot of things, but I think for me, the biggest part that I like to focus on is around operations because you're dealing with people. And when I look at my history of my career, the most important aspects to my growth have been the relationships with people. And so if the people and the processes are running in tandem with each other, then there's a lot of success there. And one of the other things that I want to promote within the industry, and especially with young people coming in, is how to have an enjoyable and successful career within this industry.
Yeah, I think sometimes that can get missed, and whether we're talking specifically about print or more broadly speaking, I was on a live stream earlier today, and that kind of came up in terms of getting to choose what your day looks like, right, and the things that drive you and get you excited about showing up for work and contributing, and what it takes from both sides, right, like what it
Yeah.
takes from the leadership side to be able to, again, to your point, foster those relationships and encourage folks, even when you don't feel like doing that, or when you have, some personal things that pop up, it's you still get to choose how you react to that, how
Yep.
you move forward with it, right? Like
Yeah.
every day's an adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we've witnessed today, yeah. I watched your podcast interview with Kelly Malazzi, and I immediately reached out to her because I feel like her message is very on point with
Yeah.
what we're dealing with up here. And even though the size of the market is very, very different in the US as it is up here, a lot of our challenges are still the same. And,
Yeah.
the generational changes and a lot of the leadership is still the same generation that it has been for the last few generations. And so how do you help coach them through the different types of people coming in and different types of learning and communication styles? That's definitely been a fun one for me watching it.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in the middle, like watching it from both sides just happening, going, okay, this is going to be really interesting.
But to that point, right? Like I think print specifically is an interesting industry from the perspective of, not just the kind of aging workforce in terms of ownership and leadership, right? But they need folks like you that are that that bridge really
Yeah.
between. We grew up with some technology, not as much as exists today, but we've got to see a lot of the advancements of it, which means we're still comfortable doing a lot of those things, and we're still kind of old enough to appreciate how things used to be before some of those advancements. So I think it's a really unique opportunity to, one, bridge that gap, two, it's just another opportunity, right? Like this is an industry that has an aging workforce, an aging skill
Yeah.
set, and so we need to find talent that gets excited about these things, and we need to talk to some of the older folks and get them excited about connecting in a new way, that maybe doesn't feel as natural as as it could or should. So
Yeah.
how have you been able to kind of do some of that from that mentorship perspective? Like, have you found opportunities to maybe make some introductions from that mentor mentee perspective? Or I'd love to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah. So PELT is a part of the Next Generation Task Force, which was created within Print Forward specifically to help try and bridge that gap. One of the things that I've had on my list to do and to start for a long time now is creating a mentorship program. There is one operating out of Ontario. There was another type of mentorship program that was happening here, and I'm hoping to start digging into that. I've been really focused on PELT for the last 5 years because I want to make sure that that is running smoothly and doesn't require so much of my attention so that I can start focusing on mentorship. But I think if you ask anybody that knows me within the industry up here, they'll tell you that I'm definitely one who makes introductions and will help foster any kind of relationship, right? I pay very close attention to what people are like, what they're good at, what they excel at. And so when someone comes to me asking for help, 8 times out of 10, I can't help them, but I know somebody who can.
Yeah.
And so, just continuing to build on those relationships and meeting new people, and then working with the students coming out of BCIT. I love going to their open house and meeting the new students and working throughout their term to build those relationships. And not everybody asks for help, but some of them do. And the ones that we call keeners tend to get the most attention. And so trying to encourage them to ask for help, to go and introduce yourself to the business owners and the managers, because we're not scary people. we're
Yeah.
all pretty easygoing and fun to talk to. And we have a lot of business owners within BC that I find are so interesting and so willing to share their stories and just give you whatever it is that you need, which is so incredible to me, considering how much people can just kind of keep things very close to the chest, and
Yeah.
they recognize it's time. We need to share this information as much as possible and try and make as many people fall in love with our industry as we can before our time's up.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I agree. I think print, generally speaking, the folks that are involved in really any aspect of print, doesn't matter if you're, with an OEM or a supplier, but you can really call and ask anybody nearly anything. And folks are just kind of open books in terms
Yeah.
of, hey, let me make a connection. Let me, share some of my experience or stories with you. And it's not so much of what can you do for me, or what's in it for me. It's very much, let's just help each other, let's get this problem solved, let's kind of move forward together. So
Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree with that. I'd love to know, like, from your perspective, what do you see as some of, like, the top challenges in terms of making the connection and getting those conversations started, like specifically with the young folks? Like, do you hear any kind of pushback, or are there any big gaps that you see with that, with the kind of work and conversations you've been having?
I think this is where the counselor in me is going to come out a little bit.
Okay.
I see a lot of insecurity with the younger generations feeling like maybe they're being a burden if they're asking too many questions or if they're taking up too much of your time. Um, there's a lot of humility in them, which I love, but sometimes I'm like, hey, no, if you got to talk to them, you have to take this opportunity, and I'm just so like wanting to shake them out of it and saying, no, you can't let your own insecurities hold you back, because they will hold you back. And you have this whole industry of people who are willing and able to give you whatever it is that you are looking for. You have to take it. And I've seen that happen a lot, where there have been some pretty incredible missed opportunities because they just didn't want to take it, and maybe they weren't ready at the time. And I always like to think that timing is perfect, and that there
Yeah.
will be other opportunities for them down the road. I never want to push anyone to take an opportunity that they don't fully believe is right for them or that they're ready for. I myself have turned down opportunities where I'm sure my parents are just going, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" um, but I believe in my path, right? And
Yeah.
so I want to give those people the same trust that they believe in their path, and it's just my job to show them what's available, and should they choose it, great. But I'd hate for them not to choose it because they don't think they're worthy of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's super insightful. I mean, maybe we'll have to reserve this for a future conversation, but it's like I'd love to unpack, just with your background and experience to understand like what you think is driving that. And then the other side of that, which to me is a really cool connection to this conversation, but is, when you find that mentor, right? Like I think that is the bridge, the conduit, what have you, where if you are feeling like, boy, I can't ask all the things I'm really
Okay.
curious about in this world,
Okay.
like that's the perfect spot for a
Yeah.
mentor, to step forward and to be that kind of guiding voice, and to just have some frank conversations, whether that's to boost somebody, their self-belief, right? Or whether it's to help shape some of that direction. So
Yeah.
yeah. Boy, yeah, that would be good. So shifting gears just slightly, but still connected, only because we're in the day and age of every conversation is AI focused. I'd love to understand if you have a perspective on how technology may play a part in kind of one, creating some excitement about the industry and
Well,
again tapping into those young folks, but two, like from that mentorship perspective, have you seen any sort of connection between those things with the work that you're doing?
well, for one, I'm not going to pretend to know anything about it because my limitations, or I guess my experience with AI recently, has just been more around Chat GPT and helping helping me find the right words to say things, and to really reduce the amount of time that it takes to do things that I know are important, and I know I want it to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And I really don't want to take 6 hours to do that. I know I can get to that point on my own, but my time is valuable. My team needs me, and the last thing I want to do is shut myself away because I'm trying to achieve perfection. And there are a lot of perfectionists in our industry. Um, I think when it comes to the print software, I definitely think that we need to harness it as much as possible. Where that's actually going to lead to, I don't know. I think it's still very early stages. We're just starting to see better usage of it on the internet. Google is using Gemini now. So instead of just Googling something and trying to find something out and having to pick the best article for yourself that you
Yeah.
might believe, it will just immediately compile the information for you. And I think that's where it's going to be most helpful to us immediately, is getting us the data that we need quickly and efficiently. And anything outside of that is way over my head. So
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's interesting, and kind of back to the point too, right, about losing some of the knowledge and talent that obviously the industry has, figuring out kind of new and innovative ways to tap into that, leverage that information. I always think about not so much from the kind of mentor mentee perspective, but thinking through how we get folks throughout the supply chain, right? Whether it's in customer service or somebody out on the shop floor, but how do we get them kind of the fastest, most concise access to the best information, right?
yeah,
And the best internal information, so that ultimately they can solve the challenge that they're faced, and kind of move on with the rest of their day. So yeah,
yeah,
I think that's really the place. But to your point, I completely agree that we're just scratching the surface.
hmm,
So many people feel left out of this conversation, and I try to explain to them, it's like, the vast majority of companies have not fully adopted this. There's so many underlying issues that need to be resolved before people go head first into this stuff. But yeah, I appreciate you weighing in on it.
thank you.
Yeah. What kind of advice or guidance would you give some of the young folks that are interested in maybe a leadership position within print? Again, starting off the conversation, we talked about you receiving an award and being a young leader in print. What was that kind of trajectory like for you, and what would you say to folks that are maybe interested in that path as well?
Yeah, it was 20 years in the making for sure. And I only just celebrated my 20th year about 11 days ago. So I
Awesome.
moved here January 15th or 16th in 2005. And it was definitely a journey, and it was a hard journey. It doesn't need to be for everyone. I'm just the type of person that likes to make life more difficult.
I thought I was the only one for that. Okay, there's two of us in the world.
I think part of that is because I'm a perfectionist, and I like to explore things as much as possible to make sure, okay, have I done absolutely everything I can to make this work? And that's in jobs, relationships, friendships, everything. And the best advice that I could give is be patient, but don't let people take advantage of you. There's a very big importance to the amount of time that you spend in the industry doing certain things. I think Bryce, our president here at Royal, mentioned to me that he was actually interested in hiring me. It was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And I said, oh no, you wouldn't have wanted that version of me. I am way better now. And that goes back to, everything is perfect in timing. And
Yeah.
the experiences that I got at my previous employer were so incredible and very broad. Like I was doing so many different things, and I learned a lot in that role. Plus I had, the schooling for counseling. So there was so much that had happened in a period of about 4 or 5 years. And sometimes you have to be able to understand, okay, this is not working for me. Some of the older generations, I think, experience this more, where when we go to work for a company, loyalty is so important and we want to spend our entire career there. And as much as that can be a good thing for the employer, may not necessarily be a good thing for you, because you might be missing out on other opportunities of
Yeah.
growth and learning. I think that if you're in the same environment for decades, you're only seeing one perspective, you're only seeing one example. And the beauty of our industry, and one of the things that my Pelt students share every single time, is, oh my god, I can't believe how different each company is that we go to, because plant tours are a big part of our program. And you've got little print shops, you've got big print shops, you've got mom and pop shops, you've got corporate size companies. So going in and seeing how the different environments are is really important, and figuring out what what do you feel is best for you? I don't really do well in corporate. I don't like rigidity. I don't like being boxed in. I don't like red tape. I need to just be able to be myself and be creative and be trusted that I'm going to do, what's needed at the time, and that I'm trusted that I'll ask for help when I need it, right? And so yeah, I think just understanding that things take time. I don't want to say too much about it, but some of the older generations might have reported that some of the younger generations might be a little entitled. And so I would say, listen, yeah, it takes time, but if you're really, really bright and you're passionate and you've got ownership mentality and you really care, it's not going to take you as much time, especially when you're in the right place, because a good leader will recognize that in you and they'll want to foster that leadership within you and help you grow. So those are things to pay attention to as well. If you're working for a company where you don't feel like you're seen, you're not.
Yeah. No, it's some really great advice in there. And yeah, there's never a right or wrong answer. It's, what's right today and right with me. And the same goes, for the company as well. You
Yeah.
can kind of argue both sides that sure, loyalty, longevity is certainly good for a company. But I can argue the opposite and say, then you're stuck in your ways and you're never
Yep.
challenging yourself. And how do you know that this is the best way forward for the company and the rest of the team members, right? If you
Yeah.
never cycle through people. So yeah, I don't think that there's again kind of a right or wrong answer. And I love what you said from the individual's perspective, because having grown up in the industry and worked again for both my parents and for a really big company within the industry, I can certainly say and feel comfortable speaking from both sides of that and understanding like when it was right to move on and move to the next thing, and ultimately when it was the right time for me to seek an alternative. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think paying attention to that. And I again, I would argue that maybe there's some folks that feel entitled or want to grow quicker than their skill set allows them for.
Mhm.
But I think it's good to be hungry. I think when
Yeah.
you have an idea that you want to do a thing, whatever that thing happens to be, then that's great. But
Yeah.
where that mentorship and guidance can come in and help, to form that trajectory is ultimately the stuff that we from a leadership perspective really need to be mindful of, and from a team member perspective or somebody that's rising up into that, be on the lookout
Yeah.
for folks that have that right alignment. I'll
We
call
we
it.
call them rock stars. It's that rock star
Yeah.
thing. And yeah, by all means, if you've got that hunger and that drive and you're earning it 100%, but don't expect it to fall in your lap if you're
Yeah.
not going to put in the effort and actually work for it.
Yeah, it's like this great idea, right? It's like you can set all the goals that you want, but at the end of the day, if you don't show up and put in the work, right, none of it matters.
That's
So,
right.
focus on putting in the work and showing up and, getting yourself in the right spot and a lot of luck and timing, right? But you still, to your point, you still have to show up and do the thing. You got to put in the
That's
work. You
right.
can't, just nobody's going to hand it to you. So
Nope. Nope.
I
Well, they
love it.
might, but you wouldn't be able to keep it for very long.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a great point, right? Like that is actually a really great point, because I've seen that actually play out where, more in the family business side where, somebody was given probably much more authority and autonomy than they ever should have. And ultimately what the result of that was,
Yeah.
it's, yeah, you got to be willing to do the work,
And
as much.
honestly, that's one of the things that I love about Royal. Bryce and Chelsea are in their mid 30s, and you think, wow, that's really young to be running a print company that's been around for 92 years. But they've been here for most of their lives. They were the
Yeah.
ones running around here as little kids, and um, I really appreciate the value that they put on this company. It's not just a job to them. It's not like, oh, we got this company now. They really are focused on how to make it grow and how to make it last another 92 years, on top of making sure that the culture is the way they want it to be, and that Royal is a desired place to work, which it is. And, I really respect them a lot. They're very open-minded, and they listen, and they take every comment seriously. And I think that's really rare in some of the family generational ownerships, as well as even the younger generational ownerships. So,
Yeah. No, I mean, having been in many, many shops, I can attest to that. I think sometimes people, again, from a leadership or ownership perspective, think that this stuff just happens, right? Like
what?
that the culture just happens, that you just have hired so many amazing people that it's just magic and everybody shows up and, every day is puppies and rainbows, right? And the reality is, as you know, right?
Yeah,
Like, it's work every
it's
single
a
day, and
lot of
it's
work.
work from the tippy top all the way down to the bottom. And that doesn't mean you're
Yeah.
not going to have disagreements and bad days. You're not going to have, really difficult decisions that you're going to have to execute, upon, and all the like. It means that people are actively engaged. That's how you last 92 years, right?
Yeah.
Like, that is a testament of, the work done before them and the work that they're continuing, right? That doesn't
Yeah.
just happen,
Nope.
so yeah. Speaking of that, like, what are some of the exciting things that we should be on the lookout for from Royal?
Oh my goodness. Put me on the spot.
Great segue. Thank
Um,
you.
well, we just rebranded last November, which is really, really exciting. That's a testament to the new ownership, of course,
Yeah.
and also where we want to go. I can't really say too much right now, but we are looking at new equipment, which is really going to help kind of take us to the next level of where we want to be. We expanded into labels a few years ago, so we're going to be looking at where else we can expand. Packaging makes the most amount of sense for us. We're very lucky because this land and property is owned by the Gishin family, so they're free to do what they need to do within the building. It's a huge building. From the outside, it looks tiny if you Google map us, but this place is actually humongous, and it's a pretty neat, very unique space. And I'm just looking forward to all the neat things that we're going to do with it in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, can't wait to follow along, and I'm sure there'll be some teasers in the marketplace
I wish I
before
could
too
say more.
long. No, I did.
Very
I put you
soon.
on the spot, so
Yeah.
well, that's awesome.
Plus, we have our sugar sheet, which isn't new. But we are the only commercial printer in Canada that has a commercial grade stock. So our sugar sheet copy paper is available for sales on Amazon now. Like, anybody can buy it, but we're the only printer that has, the different text and cover weights, coded, uncoated. So we're using it for the majority of the print that we're doing for our customers. And, that helps us on the sustainability and the affordability. It really does set us kind of out as a unique printer there, but yeah, definitely more to come.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to follow along. We're kind of already over time. Hard to believe because I love this conversation. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you feel compelled to share with anybody that's out there today? Anything from a mentorship perspective or any other exciting initiative you've got going on?
I think I'm good. Just don't be afraid to reach out to people. And, sometimes it might not be received the way you think it should be. And it's probably because a lot of us are just not used to being proactively contacted. But I think the more that we do it, the more it will become a comfortable thing to experience. And we need to take advantage of that and just start interacting with, people on a genuine and authentic level. I'm not talking about, trying to build up your connections by the thousands, but real meaningful relationships and relationships of substance that are going to be impactful to you and hopefully to them as well.
Yeah, no, great advice there. I would add that, oftentimes people get discouraged if somebody doesn't respond
Yeah.
or, And ultimately, everybody, as you should know internally, right? Everybody just has a bunch of things going on. So don't necessarily take that
Yeah.
to heart. It's okay to reach back out and, to your point, have a genuine intention, want to have conversation with people. That's how it all begins, right? That's
Yeah.
that's literally how it all begins is one message, one conversation. And so yeah, so I love that. Jennifer, for anybody that wants to reach out and connect with you, where's the best place for them to do that at?
I am on LinkedIn, so they can definitely find me on LinkedIn or just Google Royal Printers and ask for me if you give us a call. They're pretty good at not screening my calls here. and I have my phone, it goes right to my cell phone. So unless it says spam or fraud, I'll pick up.
I love it. Well, I'll make sure to drop your LinkedIn profile in the show description. And yeah, thanks so much for coming on the Everyday Business Problems podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun.
Thank you so much for listening today. If we brought you any value, please rate, subscribe, and share our podcast. Also, be sure to connect with us on social media by searching @The Crysler Club. Until next week, I'm your host, Dave Crysler.